What in the world did the Biden administration just do? 2 bombs dropped on us in the same week in the market? Man, things are getting wild. First, we've got a rumor of a hike in the capital gains tax, and now he's talking about giant reform in the 1031 exchange. The world's going to end! Or not. Everybody relax. These are all proposed items within a giant infrastructure plan that's going to be put together in pieces. And we've got rumor that market reacted to this week that there could be a potential 45% capital gains tax, and the 1031 exchange program within the real estate investment world could get intense reform that could potentially cause a lot of strife throughout the investment of real estate in general. Before we get into anything, though, do me a favor. If you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you like the video at the end, hit that thumbs up. I really appreciate it. BuiltByBaileys.com's got all your merch. So go hit that up, check it out. Maybe there's something there for you. That actually helps keep this channel running too. So let's go ahead and jump into what this reform in the 1030 exchange means. And I'll run through it, explain some stuff that's going on. Like I said, I'm going to go and talk about the fictitious value of any information that's out there, and then kind of give some theories on what I think could be happening if this all goes through as is. All right, so here we are. We're looking at an article from MarketWatch that's kind of discussing the good and bad, or what they call the double-edged sword for real estate, as far as the 1031 exchange reform bill and what's proposed by the Biden administration. Basically, if you guys haven't understood to this point what a 1031 exchange is, or you've heard the news but you haven't actually figured out what it is, I've got another video that talks specifically about the 1031 exchange. Make sure you go click on that once you understand what it is and the tools thereby you can be using in your real estate investment portfolio. Okay, so basically what's discussing is kind of the infrastructure package that the Biden administration is trying to roll out. The $2.3 trillion was already pushed out there. Everybody got money if they were within the tax bracket protocols for that. And then he's going to roll out another $1.8 trillion supposedly to address some other priorities, including childcare, education. All right. So really what's going to happen is they're trying to reform the 1031 exchange to force taxes to be paid on anything over the thresholds of $250,000 on capital gains on a real estate sale if you're single, or a $500,000 capital gains if you're filing jointly as a married couple. Those are the thresholds of the 1031 exchange as far as capital gains. Anything after those values and those categories, you got to pay capital gains tax on. Right now, capital gains tax percentage is 20%. And like I said at the beginning of the video, there is a proposal in there that could run it up to 45% if they get it voted in. Now, again, these are all hypotheticals until this is actually voted and signed off on. We don't know what's going to happen with any of that. I haven't actually seen any bill packages and language yet. So we're just basically going off of hearsay and what the administration has been talking about overall. So what it's really talking about is the goal here is to focus on the wealthier Americans and forcing them to pay more taxes. They think the 1031 reform is going to help do that, especially on the real estate investor level. Some have speculated this hit the middle class home sellers in an expensive market and have more than $1 million of capital gains from real estate, but this is really rare. This is a guy from Redfin talking about the actual possibility of this affecting most people in the 1031 exchange market. As far as it being really rare, I would disagree with that. There's a lot of appreciable value that has happened in the last 5, 6, even 10 years in most markets across the country. A lot of people are going to see, if they were to sell their home right now because of that giant rocket up in appreciation, are going to see over a $500,000 capital gain. So they're going to be paying a lot of tax. And they won't be able to roll it into something else if this tax plan goes through. Okay? So even in the markets where home prices are over $1 million, most of it's still serviced by debt, not all by equity. That is factual. There's a lot of houses where there's value in the home over $1 million, and there's still a lot of debt service as a mortgage on the home. But there are a lot of homes where people have been there a while, or they've come in the last 5, 6 years from other states, like here in Colorado, and put a lot of money down on a purchase. So there's not as much debt service on those homes. And when they do go to sell them, if they do, they're going to see that max gain, which is going to be taxable. And they will not be able to roll that into another purchase. Okay. Biden has proposed hiking the tax on capital gains for households making over $1 million. The White House proposes raising that rate to 39.6% for millionaires, up from 20% where it currently stands for the country's top earners. That actually is the first time I've seen it below 40% in the proposal. The last talk was actually at a 45% capital gains tax. So maybe that means they're actually starting to negotiate that number across the board in Congress. I don't know. All I've seen is 45%. So far, that's all I've heard. Additionally, Biden administration has called for ending the ability to step up the cost basis for real estate when it's inherited. That stepping up really is what is talked about as a cost basis. So let's just say there's an inheritance that's been given to an estate. Someone passes away, unfortunately, and a group of kin, siblings, whoever it is, inherits this home. And they were able to, prior to anything else happening at the current state, they're able to step up that cost basis to the time when they actually inherited the home, not when the home was originally purchased, per se, underneath the estate itself. So let's say it was purchased 40 years ago for $100,000. Recently, they inherited this property. It's now worth $700,000 or $600,000. The cost basis is $100,000. They're taking a house on now that's worth $600,000. There's a $500,000 capital gains minus any depreciable debt service that's in there. Okay, so they're going to see that value from the original purchase, not one from they inherited the house. That step up basis can reduce the tax burden of the heirs considerably in these circumstances, which again, that's a big burden to take on if you weren't planning on taking that on to begin with. Finally, Biden is calling on Congress to eliminate tax break for real estate investors, which we're going to talk about now, which is the 1031 exchange. Under this break, if owners of an investment in business use the proceeds of the sale to purchase another property within 180 days, and again, go watch my other video on the 1031 exchange if you haven't already, so you understand how this 1031 exchange works in real estate. The Biden plan is talking about eliminating the ability to do this when capital gains are greater than $500,000. Now, that's for couples filing jointly. If you're a single person filing, your threshold for capital gains on a 1031 is $250,000 currently. All right, capital gains rate hike could be a double-edged sword, as this article is talking about. I'm going to talk about why this is actually true. By design, increasing capital gains and tax rate won't affect most Americans because of the taxable basis to which they're going to be hit by, meaning their income. Okay, but among who it does affect, it could prompt conflicting results. The current proposal to increase the capital gains tax may impact a broader segment of Americans than initially anticipated. And that has a lot to do with the state of the housing market right now. Okay, so many of these homeowners are silent, and the baby boom generations that purchased properties many, many, many decades ago. Okay, baby boomers, contrary to popular belief, were born between 40s and early 60s. Okay, and the early 60s is pushing it. But boomers are not people just over 25 years old, as we've come to kind of call them. It reflects a different economic environment. Today's market is defined by strong demand driven mainly by millennials and low interest rates. That is true. Obviously, most people out buying homes right now, investment or primary residence, are millennials, and they're buying them at rates we've never seen before, especially for the boomers, the real ones. These extremely low rates are actually helping to continue to buy homes, even though we have zero supply on the market in most areas. Home prices are rising at a record pace, consequently increasing the likelihood that a homeowner who bought their home years ago could see significant capital gains if they were to sell. So it says right here, the current proposal to increase capital gains tax may impact a broader segment of Americans. That statement is actually true, more so than I think they understand. Proceeds of selling a home on top of the homeowner's other income could push more of them into that $1 million plus bracket. Many people that didn't think they were going to show that if they're going to sell their home with those huge appreciable values are going to get pushed into a $1 million plus tax bracket when they go to file, if that happens even next year. So that's actually going to hit them with a big, big capital gains tax.
especially if that rate even hits it at 39% value. That's going to be a whopper for most people. That's actually going to it could end up pushing their normal or average income levels below what they are not or they're used to. McLaughlin says, as double-edged sword, for those who are thinking about selling in the next few years, a policy may entice them to sell their investment property sooner. Again, this is true because think about it. If they see this happening on any level, especially in the next 6 months to a year, people that have seen that appreciable value and are already considering selling to move on to something else, whether it's a primary residence or investment properties, this is basically going to force, in my opinion, it's going to force more supply into the market because they're going to go take advantage of the 20% capital gains tax rate to avoid the 39 or 45%, whatever it ends up being. They're going to try and take advantage of a lower tax rate now to make more money. I mean, it's pretty common sense. So that could pump, much needed supply into the housing market. Yes, that's what I just said. But we're going to talk about why that's also bad. At a time when buyers are struggling to find homes to buy, it could have the opposite effect in the longer term. And this is a key point here. So he says, I fear the policy may lock investors for a much longer period of time than the current rate, and thus be counterproductive in helping free up investor inventory. Meaning, these guys may just sit on these properties and not push them into the market, as maybe this is what they're trying to entice under this administration to increase supply, which will help get more people to buy homes. Consequently, could even push the cost of homes down if there's too much supply. I mean, simple economics, supply and demand, that's over a term will happen. All right, so McLaughlin's saying this may actually lock investors up for a longer period, and it will actually not force these investors to start selling, which is what he thinks the administration is trying to force here. The bigger guys possibly could start looking at less expensive properties to invest in because they're going to, if they can't avoid rolling their capital gains into another property, or they're going to get hit with a huge tax burden, they're going to end up buying less expensive properties. And those properties could be exactly the same properties that there's no supply for right now. So the people that are still looking or having problems looking for those properties, those lower income properties, those smaller properties, it's just going to further bottleneck and squeeze out those first time buyers or buyers that are looking to even downgrade. There's going to be even more competition, and that competition is now coming from the big investor as opposed to the small average day Joe investor or homeowner. And now you've got a bigger bottleneck of people looking at the same type of properties. That is another possibility. Alternatively, some argue the higher tax rate could simply cause wealthier Americans to reevaluate where to park their money, and that's kind of what I was touching on. I speculate this raises the incentive of higher earners to roll investments into opportunity zone funds, and therefore could spur additional development there. That's kind of what I was really kind of talking about. They're going to start looking at less expensive properties to buy, the same properties everyone else currently is trying to find, okay? 1031 exchange has been a cornerstone of commercial real estate investments. Now, this is the kind of the key here, because this is kind of counterintuitive to what actually the administration is understanding, in my opinion. People that are reacting to this saying this is great, it's going to force the wealthier to pay more in tax. Here's the kicker here. By and large, the beneficiaries of these policies were actually small investors. So this report that these guys are putting out here is actually showing that there's more people that are using the 1031 exchange now that are small investors, and they're actually way less of the big boys playing this 1031 game than they originally thought. So nearly half, or 47% of the properties involved, were held by sole proprietors, and only 37% were owned by S-corps. Now, just because they're sole proprietors doesn't mean they're small-time investors. It just so happens that more of those people are. S-corps, LLCs, generally those types of investment groups tend to be bigger investors, but that's not necessarily always the case. 84% of the properties involved in the 1031 exchange were owned by small investors, according to data from the NAR, the National Association of Realtors. Think about that. Smaller investors, so 84% of them were involved in a 1031 exchange at least once. That's not the big boys playing this game. That's who it's going to end up hurting if this goes through. Eliminating this provision would likely lead down to a downward adjustment in property prices. Again, I just touched on that. That's going to throw out a lot of supply, which consequently over time can actually start bringing home prices down. If there's more to buy, there's less panic buying and pushing the button on just taking it as is, which again, simple supply and demand in economics will actually bring the price down to that threshold. Okay. Slightly more than half the properties involved in 1031 exchanges were residential properties, single family rental homes, apartment buildings, and condominium units. You got to keep that in mind. That's actually a bigger number. I'm telling you, there's more people on the smaller side involved in 1031s than people actually understand. All right, so then they start talking about some of the Trump administration tax cuts. Republican Tax Reform Act reduced the mortgage interest deduction and eliminated ability to deduct state and local taxes. So keep that in mind. The other administration was taking some of that stuff out too. Again, I don't talk about politics here, but understanding what the consequences of the capital gains tax hike possibly and this 1031 kind of coming into fruition as far as them drastically reforming that program, that's actually going to hurt more of the majority of people involved in real estate than I think the administration realizes. Again, speculation here, just my opinion, but you're seeing some of these stats come out on who it's actually affecting and who uses the 1031 more. Some projected the tax burden could spark a larger wave of migration from expensive coastal real estate markets than already happening at the time. But the 2020 census data is a murky picture, and it's not clear that high taxes alone prompted much of the change in people's real estate decision making. So again, I think because people are going to see a larger gain on their 2020 tax returns, they're going to actually be getting hit with more taxes than they've ever been before, just because of the way things went down while we were running through a COVID market. We're still in one, but things are obviously opening up. And now you're going to get hit with these types of programs that could actually further delineate any extra liquid cash, especially on the investment side. So that was kind of a ramble, but the key notes here are the fact that if this reform goes through as presented, and again, we need to actually see the bill and the language within the bill before we react. Sorry, I'll take off my spectacles. We need to understand how that's affecting and who that's affecting, okay? And the repercussions behind it. Now, I get the fact that we're trying to recoup tax money. We've had a lot of money that's been printed and run out in the markets to help people in need. But at the same time, we've got a lot that's going to be taken as a burden if these are presented as is moving forward. So, again, keep in mind, nothing's in stone yet. We're going to just sit here and wait and see what happens under the current administration of what actually gets passed, what gets negotiated, how long it takes before these get put into place. But just something to keep in mind as a real estate investor, be aware of what's happening with the capital gains tax possibly and the 1031 exchange reform that could potentially induce more tax burden on you as you're getting ready to possibly do a 1031 exchange or sell your current property. So there's my long-winded answer. We'll see what happens. Either way, there's never a time not to buy real estate. There's never a time not to set up your long-term investment plan and keep that positive energy. So with that being said, guys, thanks for watching. Hit that thumbs up on the way out if you liked the video. If you got questions, I know I ramble a bit, drop them in the comments below. I got plenty of other videos on. Don't forget our podcast on all audio platforms and right here on YouTube. You can listen to us on the go. And I appreciate you guys watching the channel. And until next time, keep building.